I'll note that the town planner is not here this evening, as we knew it in advance. So there may be some questions hanging out there that we would, refer to the code enforcement officers to help us with, or something that we can resolve on our own, or perhaps defer to next month's meeting if we can't resolve it. With that, the first item on our agenda is to approve the minutes. Have members of the board had a chance to review the minutes from last month's meeting? Seeing nods, Scott says yes. Would anyone like to put forth a motion to approve these minutes as amended in the document that's shared, that was shared with us that's now on the screen?
I'll move to accept the minutes as amended.
Okay, so we have a motion to, do we have a second for that?
Second.
Second for that motion? Any
Actually, sorry.
Yes,
I had
let's
a
discuss.
Quick thing. This is the board asked. It's down a little later. Board asked why this lot could not be split up into two as it currently stands. Indicated that the lot split may create a non-conforming lot, which they're trying to avoid. Was that ever part of the discussion?
That was my understanding.
That it was. They
That
were
the
trying to
lot,
avoid a non-
what we determined based on the size of the existing lot and the minimum lot sizes allowed for that zone, was that it could be broken up into, was it 3? Or 2?
Right, and
2
that's
lots at least.
that's their below. But then above that, it says Mr. La Liberte indicated that the lot split may create a non-conforming lot, which they are trying to avoid.
So I think that they
that-
were given information that because of wetland issues, that the existence of those wetlands may not count
Oh,
toward
okay.
the minimum lot size.
Okay, gotcha.
And I don't know if everybody in the room at the time agreed with that, but what we in the board, I think, determined was that there was enough land that would have satisfied 2 lots
Okay.
at the minimum for the district.
Okay.
That was my guess.
And
Yeah, I just didn't remember that. I knew that Orion had spoken to them
Right.
independently, and I thought maybe that was part of his discussion, but I'm fine leaving it if everyone, it's okay.
No, and that next line of, the board asked clarifying questions about the possible non-conforming lot creation was that piece of that
Okay.
back and forth. So
Okay.
I think all these, as they stand, are correct.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Yeah, part of it was that there was an existing house on the property,
Right.
and
Understood.
they wanted to give a smaller portion of land to that house, which
Right.
would have made it non-conforming. They wanted to reserve the larger portion of land that abutted the pond, Chickawaukee.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah,
would have made it
as long as it's
non-conforming.
accurate to our conversation, then I'm fine with it.
That's correct.
Okay, cool.
So any other concerns about these documents? Still have the motion on the table. Scott, any from you?
Nope, no concerns.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second on the table to approve these as amended in the document before us. Show of hands for voting to approve. 6-0-0. The notes from our July meeting are approved. Next agenda item is the application of a revision to a site plan for a parcel located at 50 Park Street, identified as map 35, lot 69, owned by Goose River Holdings LLC. This application is being represented by Andrew Rogers. So come on up and assume. Are there any others that are representing tonight, either in the room or online?
Peter
Welcome.
might get called up.
Okay, we'll call him up if needed.
In case you get called up.
First, what we usually do is have any clarifying questions from the board before we get into the actual nuts and bolts of the application, and then open it up for public comment. So any first clarifying questions about this application? I think we were all here when the pre-app came through, so we should all be familiar with
The only question that I wanted to ask was, and I'm not sure that it even affects the issue, is whether or not there's going to be any hazardous materials used or stored in the new building.
I think it's just chemicals that go out on the golf course.
Okay.
So nothing hazardous
Okay.
that, would have to have special.
Okay, so, yes, Clark?
I just noticed a couple things that seem to be inconsistent in the document itself.
Sure.
But I'll wait until we get to that point, I guess, and
Okay.
address it.
We'll have several more questions in time for
Yes.
it. So first things, I didn't, at the time that Orion left for his vacation, he had not received any comments from the public, but I'll open it up to the public that's in this room tonight. I guess we're not online, so we don't have. We are online?
Yes.
Any comments from the public online, Jeff? Negative. Okay. I'll open it to the comments from the public here tonight. Hearing none, close the public comment period, and now we can dig into the application itself. So, Jeff, I'm sorry to see you go Scott, but we're going to replace you with the contents of the application on the screen. Do you have that item? I think it's in.
I'll wait, yeah, just keep going, I'll catch up to you.
Yeah, I think there's a couple documents in there, so I think it's the one that's listed as Goose River Maintenance Building Permit Application. And then we'll also need to see the next one, which is revised site plan elevation. Go up a level from where you are. So click on that 3 site plan revision, Goose River Golf.
Sorry.
Up one and to the right. There. Okay, so the 2 documents on the bottom are what we need to see. That one primarily.
The drawing list that's on this cover sheet is probably not accurate with what was revised,
Right.
but I didn't revise the cover sheet because in the time that I got it to Orion, it was gonna be reviewed, so.
Okay. Well, if anything comes up that we feel
Okay,
needs to be
yeah.
corrected, we'll make that note. Did every member here tonight on the board have a chance to review this document?
Yes.
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 Great. So the first thing, I'm just following the flow that Joe handed down to me, and I think they're all familiar with for reviewing site plan application. The first thing we have to review is to whether there is a complete application. And simply that is that it meets the requirements of section 1300. And 1300 just spells out the requirements of an application, including site plan, written narrative. I don't have it in front of me at the moment, but let me check. So what we're aiming for, though, is a motion to approve the site plan application as complete.
I have one question.
Go ahead, Jen.
I noticed in the plan that there's going to need a new septic system installed, and I'm wondering what the protocol on that is, whether there has to be a permit application and review of a new septic system, and whether that's part of the work that we're doing now, or is that a separate issue?
That's a great question. I'll pose this to Scott Bickford, Code Enforcement Officer.
We can't issue a building permit until we have a septic system design in hand. But at that point, we can issue the permit. It does not mean they have to put it in before they build. They can act on it, but there is a time frame that they have to do so.
So we can approve a plan, but they can't build until you approve, or you
We have
see
to
the,
issue
until you
the
see the
permit.
plan approved.
We've seen
Okay,
the
as long as
plans.
there's a control to it, that's all I wanted to know.
Yeah, we've seen the plans, but we haven't seen the septic system design yet. so.
Okay.
Is that something the applicants are aware of, that the septic system is being proposed and needs to be permitted?
We can I'll let you speak to it, Peter.
Yes, we did a preliminary evaluation of where the septic system would go, and that's where we showed it on the drawing.
Okay.
And then normally, once we get approval from you of the site plan, we go back out and finalize the design.
Yep.
And then we go to the code office to get the plumbing permit. So
Right, and as Scott said, you can file for the permit, you won't get the certificate of occupancy until it's complete. Is that
Right.
correct, Scott?
That's close enough.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So in terms of our process here for the site plan review, we see that there is one proposed. We don't need to see the details or review the actual content of that, that septic system. We just need to know that it's coming and something to consider. So I'm looking at 1404, site plan content. So that document, I don't think Jeff needs to pull it up, but that document spells out the site plan. I think we've all seen it numerous times, what's required of it, the written statement, and
Would you just check number 9, Jeff?
number 9 in 1304. So the site is to be served by a subsurface wastewater disposal system. A report by a licensed site evaluator shall be provided. So that 13-3, oh, sorry, Jeff, you don't need to pull it up on the application. It's part of the ordinance, and I don't know if you can. Yeah, I'll just read it. We probably will want to go back to the ordinance, which you can get from the Town of Rockport website, if you don't have access to it to the SharePoint. But to Tom's question, the part of the application says, if the site is to be served by a subsurface wastewater disposal system, a report by a licensed site evaluator shall be provided. I think it's known that this needs to be provided. I wonder if the data and evaluation design need to be part of our review.
Well, this is one of the criteria for completion
Right,
of the application.
right. So do you think that that rises to a point that the application is not complete if, my hesitation is that all parties know that that's part of what will be required for the permit, and that we would not specifically be reviewing its content, just that it exists. So the project can't really be permitted, and built until there's a site evaluation. So I think that's sort of a judgment call on our part, whether we're going to hold it to him right now. Your thoughts on the board?
Sorry, this is number 8?
It's number 9 in 1304.
No, I mean, I think, this is a slightly different version of the same thing we ran into with the site application for the VIP piece around there.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Sorry, around the VIP application for their planting schedule. I mean, I think when it comes to things like this, that there is a notice that they have to comply to what the rules are, but that ultimately it falls with code enforcement, whether or not they satisfied it. Whether or not they write to us and say, like, and have something in here that is technically 100% accurate and ready to be fully constructed. Scott, you want to jump in?
Yes, I'll just get my toes wet. The site evaluator does the plan, and that plan comes to the plumbing inspector, not the code officer. That's my other hat.
Just happens to be,
I'm multitasking. But
Apologize.
elsewhere in the ordinance, it says that no permit can be issued unless that plan is produced and shown that it can be completed. But it doesn't say it has to be issued at that point. That is a condition of the permit. And my job is not to evaluate the soils and so forth. My job is to make sure that it gets installed as it shows on that plan.
right, so nothing goes forward without it. So
Correct, yes.
if we were to miss it, if you hadn't brought it up and we had missed it, it still would be required. So that's where I'm sort of like,
It's basically the same question that I just asked,
Yeah.
that it has to be done and there is a checkpoint for it. But it's not our responsibility
No.
to see the final on it, that you wouldn't do that until everything else was approved.
I mean, more importantly, I don't have the technical expertise to know if what I'm looking at is an approved
Of course. Neither would none of
septic
us do.
system for what we're looking at, right? Like,
Yep.
I don't have that level of expertise. I just have to make sure that everybody knows that they need to go find it.
Yep.
And that it needs to be properly installed to the people we pay
Exactly.
to approve those things to their liking, right? I mean, I think that's the role there, and I think our role here is just to make sure everybody's aware of what the requirements are, but we do not evaluate the technical aspects of it, short of kind of, whether or not they fit inside the land use ordinance as it sits.
Yep.
Yep.
Let me ask this of the applicants. The site is currently served by a subsurface wastewater system,
Yeah,
and there would be a modification to that system or a new system just serving this building?
It's a new system that's gonna serve both buildings.
Okay.
The clubhouse, the existing clubhouse and the new maintenance building.
Is
the
it a
existing
replacement?
system is close to its useful life or ending.
Okay, so it's a
So
replacement.
we're getting ahead of it while we've got somebody mobilized and we're doing a septic system.
Got it.
Let's just make it for everything and, save some money and do it.
Right.
Which we didn't talk about it that's why I wasn't on the pre-app, because we met with the contractor and someone was like, what about the septic?
Yep.
Well, why don't we talk about the septic? Holy cow. So that's why it's in here now.
Okay.
So other concerns beyond item 9,
Well,
site plan?
I'm just wondering how close we want to adhere to this list of requirements. Because if we look at it literally, I didn't see any photographs.
And yet we reviewed them, so that could
Pardon?
they could be made part of it because we have reviewed them in
But this application doesn't have them.
correct.
So, and number 14 says you will have photos of the project area to accompany the maps. So it's a question of how literal that we want to be on this. I mean, that's what it says.
Right. So we have two ways of, as a board, confronting those kinds of things, which is we can put contingencies on them, which is to say you must produce this before it can be signed. And the other way is that we can waive the requirement. We can either waive the requirement minimally, which is the requirement to produce it at this meeting, or we can waive it altogether. There's 2.5 ways we can deal with that. Or we can 3, which is to reject the application as incomplete. So those are the routes we can go down.
We've signed, we've not signed things before, waiting for a final bit of information, and I would be comfortable with doing it that way again, that we need the photographs to be a complete application, but there's nothing in my heart that says, stop, throw it out, start over again some other day. I think we need to continue as much as we could do and make a list of things that are necessary before we will actually sign it.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen the photographs. I think it's just a matter of putting them potentially in the application, so.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what are the rules of that? If they have them, we've looked at them, and if they're not in part of this packet, either in part of the file itself of the 38 pages that are there or attached as an amendment, can we drag them from the other piece and put them into this and make it part of the packet?
We can or they can, I mean,
Well,
Right, but I mean, we physically have had them.
I just would submit that that's not our job.
right.
We're probably gonna have to revise and do like a conditional, if everything goes as I planned, I'm hoping that there'd be some conditions tied to it that we can circle back within X amount of days. So that shouldn't be very difficult to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, your engineers really should have gone over point by point on this to ensure that it was complete. That's one of the requirements.
Well, I mean, the photographs, what's confusing for me is, like, we gave you guys a packet that had them in it, so I know it wasn't in it. I
Yeah,
totally
yeah.
understand it. But, I mean, we can, with what you guys are saying, you've all seen it, but we want to do whatever we need to do to appease what you guys need to feel comfortable with the permit. So if we came up short, we'll do what we need to make sure the application is complete.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to be difficult, but if we've got pieces here and pieces there and pieces somewhere, it's a difficult thing to keep track of if you got different pieces. And the signature goes with an application packet. So if something came previously, that's fine. We know you have them, but they need to be officially included in a packet before I would be myself willing to sign off on it.
Sure.
Same thing like this, number 9, the evaluator, the site evaluator for a subsurface wastewater. I know that you have an area that you've indicated the wastewater system, the new one will be placed. Got a rectangular area there on the map.
Yeah.
But what if an evaluator came and said, you don't have enough permeability of the soil here, this is not gonna work? Well, then.
We'll never get occupancy from you.
Well, then,
Right.
I think what you're saying.
So that'd be our problem, though, for us to get a permit from you, we'd never get occupancy, so that'd be really bad planning on our part to put it in a bad spot.
We did have the site evaluator go out there, and he did do his test bits, and he evaluated the soils and did several test bits, and that's the location that he came up with for the septic system.
So you did one of those pit tests to
Yes.
see that there's sufficient.
Yes,
See, and I'm sure you have a report from that. That's all it's required, to
Right.
say that, yes, you don't have to have the whole plan, but you have to have a report from an evaluator to
Sure.
say, yes, this area, this'll work, and we'll make a plan based on this area.
Okay.
So I think what I'd like to do is to follow along with Tom's pointing out of items 9 and 14, the site evaluation and the photos, is uncover anything that is lacking in the application and flag it, and then determine what we want to do with any of the incomplete items. So were there any other items, Scott as well on 9, that you found were lacking from finding that this was a complete application? Anyone else?
Can we just get Scott to actually say it out loud, make sure you got him?
Yeah, you're still there, Scott?
I'm still here. Yeah, no, I'm good.
Okay,
Thank
sorry,
you.
just checking in.
Thanks.
Thank you.
There he is.
Okay, Jan,
No, I have no other questions.
Rob,
Mm-mm.
Sam,
No, sir.
Tom?
No, I would say on the whole, the plan looks really good.
Okay. So what we'll do, I think, is we need to have a finding of fact of completeness or incompleteness. And then with these items, these 2 items, we can determine if they're causing incompletion, we can have them be contingencies on approval. Does that sound fair?
Yes.
Okay. So is there a motion for completion or incompletion that I can get on the site plan application completeness?
Well, I will move that, subject to completion of the 2 items that have been mentioned here, which you guys understand, that everything else, that it be approved when those conditions are fulfilled.
Okay.
Is that clear enough?
I second that.
Okay. Okay, any further discussion on that completion? Okay, all in favor? The motion on the table? And Scott, 6-0-0. Thank you. Okay, so the next,
Do we want to, I'm sorry, do we want to draw a time limit on that? Or is that up to I mean, they're in a hurry to get things done, I'm sure, so.
Yeah, I mean, we can turn it around quickly. The sooner we get permitting, the sooner we can deposit for steel.
Of
Which
course.
is like, we're trying to get it in the ground, the
Understood.
steel structure in, so.
Understood.
um,
No, it's in your interest to operate quickly, so.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah,
I guess it's more of an Orion question as far as, because we need to sign this thing.
yes.
And that could happen, it doesn't need to happen at a meeting, does it?
no,
No,
it
you
can
go to
happen
the
in the
office.
town office.
So I'd
And He's
imagine
not there
it's-
for the next week or so, I think, so.
Right.
um,
So I'd imagine it's whenever you guys could get it to him. And we
Well,
can
as soon as the application is complete to
Yeah.
Orion, he'll call us and we'll go down and sign it.
Yeah, I mean, the photographs are an easy fix, and then he's probably got a report from the guy that came
You
out.
have a letter from
Yeah,
Exactly.
we'll just add that in as an attachment, and that'll supplement everything, so it could be as soon as tomorrow. or
Just with,
Monday.
and an explanation of what the photographs are of.
Yeah,
just so
definitely.
we know,
I'll give you a good cover letter.
Yeah, good, terrific.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the content of photos that we saw at the last
Yeah, it's
meeting
in
2
the
months
pre-app.
ago was basically what we need.
Yes.
I wasn't gonna reinvent the wheel with it. They were gonna get pulled over into the document, already done.
Yeah,
So I'm glad that you like them.
And add
Not
the
gonna take me
subsurface
long.
evaluation and then
then it's complete,
resubmit, and it should be exactly where
at
we
least
want it to be.
complete.
There
Yeah, we
was-
haven't gone through all the things that also may be lacking, so to put a time estimate on this is sort of premature, I think. So the next step is to go through section 9, which is the zoning district review for applicability.
It's already on that zone, it's already there. What more could they
So the
do?
nature of this building is it's an accessory structure replacing a Quonset hut
Yes,
and expanding upon that in terms of size, but accessory to the golf club facility. So it's already part of an approved use in the 908 zone rural. I looked through the 908 description, golf course is an approved use there, so that's good. I didn't really see much else of concern, but if anyone on the board feels there was something to talk about there? Hearing none.
Not for me, I mean, it is not changing its usage, it's just simply adding a building to an already existing and already approved property. So, I'm treating it as, I'm much more interested in the building and the sewage system than in anything else.
Okay. So I think what we're looking for is a finding of fact, a motion to accept the proposal as an allowed use or activity in zone 908,
I would move that this use is allowed.
I'll second that.
seconded by Jan. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor to approve? 5.
Did we get Scott?
Scott, can you just say
Yeah,
yes?
aye.
if-
Hand
Yes.
up, Scott?
Yeah,
Okay, we don't see you all the time, so just say aye or nay.
I approve. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Scott. So that's 600 to accept the proposals allowed in zone 908. Okay, the next step is general performance standards, section 1305. I'm not quite certain what 1305 is actually doing independent of the rest of the zoning ordinance.
Well,
It's basically
They
just
talk-
spelling the process,
they talk about soil and erosion control,
as does,
enhancing the landscape,
Section 800.
vehicular access, parking, surface water drainage.
As in
I mean, these
section
guys, they did a good job on that,
Yeah.
I would say,
No, everything is good.
right?
but independent from chapter 800, I've not quite understood. They sort of are repeating the same information. Does anyone else get that impression of it's just saying, these are what you need to do?
That's the land use ordinance.
Yeah, and then you
Yes.
do it again. You look at it again.
He's catching on.
Yeah. So anything that stuck out to any of the members about 1305? Performance standards. Hearing none. So we're looking for a motion finding of fact that the applicant has met the standards of section 1305.
I would so move.
So moved by Tom,
One second.
seconded by Sam. Any further discussion? Voting, all in favor? 600. Okay, that's 1305. Next section is section 800, general standards of performance. So these, I think we can go through some of them in a little bit of detail, and the rest, a lot of them are not applicable in my opinion. I had questions about 801, 802. Let me actually list out what those are. 801, environmental. 802, industrial standards. 803, traffic and street design standards and access and parking. And 813, blasting. And I had no questions about cluster development, lots, livestock control, mobile homes, access management, wireless telecom facilities, service drops, home occupations, wind energy systems, itinerant peddlers. Now I have to go to the ordinance to see what the other sections are. Large solar energy systems, accessory dwelling units, planned unit developments, or affordable housing. Did anyone want to flag any of those for discussion? No. Okay. So environmental. We have the document in front of us. Jeff, that's chapter 800, section 801, so the very beginning of 800.
You got a page number?
50.
Thank you. It doesn't attach numbers. Oh, okay.
Oh,
Yeah, that's about two different sets.
yeah, all right. I mean, 8-1, move it to -1.
There we are. Thank you. Does anyone have any discussion points for section 801 environmental, which includes soils and erosion control, removal of earth materials, water quality, surface and stormwater drainage, clear cutting, nuisances, lighting, and exposed areas? So I'll start. I had a question to the applicants about section 802.2, removal of earth materials. Will any materials and spoils from the site excavation be removed from the site?
No, most likely not. We're gonna reuse anything we take out and put it back onto the course.
Okay.
So
Okay,
what,
that
what
just-
we're excavating on for the, where the building is actually going out onto the 9th fairway.
Okay, so it's not going to leave the property?
No, no, everything's staying right on the lot.
Okay, and that makes that section somewhat moot.
We like moved.
As Tom said, I think you did a good job with soils and erosion control in the document, so I'm clear on section 801.1. Any other concerns for section 801 from the board?
How far is excavation going to be performed with respect to Park Street? How far away is the excavation?
Do you have this, can we pull up the site plan?
I saw something that said 88 feet, but that was from the tree line or something. You're more than 100 feet from the road, right?
Right, well, the setback, I believe, is 50 feet from the pavement. So.
You've shown 30,
was
but
it
it's actually
30?
20. So you're good if you're at 50 for setback.
Well, what I'm talking about is excavation.
That's a different issue.
Yeah.
Can you pull the plan up?
And it's gonna be, actually, I think the site plan's in this. It was just the elevations and floor plan that I had to revise.
Keep going, Jeff.
Keep going.
We have two more.
Keep going, it's a modern drawing.
Not printed on there.
There it is.
Yes, the setback is 30 feet from the pavement, and that the building and excavation will be 60 feet from the pavement, at least, looking at it. There will be a little bit of lawn and seeding, landscaping in that second 30 feet, but not much. And it areas, most of it's area that's already disturbed.
You asked the question, Tom, about distance from,
Well, I'm looking at number 3 under 801.2. And it just seems to me we don't have information on that.
So 801.2, I'll just read the part that's, no excavation shall be extended below the grade of adjacent streets unless 100 feet from the street line or unless provision has been made for reconstruction of the street at a different level and approved by the road commissioner or selectman with advice from the public works director.
So what they're concerned about here is undermining the adjacent street.
Right.
So we call it pavement street then? Is that? Just to define it, is it where pavement is, or is it the property line of the road that we'll
I
have to
think
take
it's
it?
the pavement itself.
Because that might save us 4 or 5 feet as we're trying to get back to,
Yep.
measuring where 100 feet
It
is.
says from the street line.
Yeah.
You might have it close.
I had a hard time interpreting this one. I scratched my head a lot about that. I was like, I
Can you
don't
go to the
know.
next sheet, please? Thank you. Okay. Go down a little bit, please. The other way. Okay, right there, hold it. And I guess what is the question again?
How far is first of all, how much excavation is going to be performed there? Are you removing earth?
I might be able to, can you go to the new packet that I sent? Because I did a section cut, because I didn't do a perspective. I did a section, which I think appeased what you were asking about with the retaining wall that doesn't exist anymore, but it shows the tree cover. That might show you how much we're excavating from the site and kind of how the building's sitting in there, because
Yeah.
we're not disturbing a lot of the site that's there.
Go up, Jeff.
We're just taking out, no, go down, there's the one, I think it's all the
Okay,
way at the
sorry.
bottom. You're all right. So, go right back up, please. Past the colors, yes,
you go.
sir. You can see the foundation in the ground, so we're not really disturbing a lot that's there. And what we are taking, it's really not that much. I think it's maybe 5 feet deep for digging into that grade. Though I do understand it's not within 100 feet. 100%, we're not within what's expected of that. But to show you what we're taking out, this is close to what we're doing.
Could I ask the code enforcement officers, like, this is something that says that it's permitted by code enforcement officer. It's calling it a special permit for operations for commercial removal of soils. Is that something that you're familiar with, that you've
Not
done
really,
a lot of?
not really, but I can tell you that, the setback is measured from the edge of the hot top, edge
Yeah.
of pavement, so, and it is 20 feet,
Right.
which is awfully close. But I think there's some grandfathered status to this, that's some part of that location, if I'm not mistaken, of what's coming out. So that's already historic. But I haven't really run into this as far as the soils. You?
So what this number 3 mentions is, it says unless provision has been made for reconstruction of the street at a different level.
That's not gonna happen.
Right. And, I mean, from what I can tell, based on this section drawing, it doesn't seem reasonable to require it either. Because it's not like this is a steep embankment and you're undermining the road with what looks like 5% grade here, or
Yep.
maybe even less.
Okay, but
No, I mean, so I think it's valid concern, given the closeness to that pavement. I think it is kind of, all of it's below the grade of the road because of the slope of what's there. I think, like it says, under that section, number 3 there, with advice from the Public Works Director, I think this might be another piece where we kind of put a contingency piece on here.
I'm having a hard time hearing you.
I'm sorry, having our Public Works Director look at that and understand that road and see if he has an issue, and if it does, it needs to
I
be
would say
further
at a
along.
minimum, yeah.
But I
Because
think-
this makes it black and white.
Right, for sure, and I
It says
think,
if you're below grade
Right.
and you're within 100 feet, that's a no-no.
Unless
That's what
you,
it says.
unless you plan for the reconstruction of the road.
Yeah, right.
Right.
And they're not gonna,
Well, they're not going to, the road commissioner, selectman, and public works director are not going to say we're gonna reconstruct the road.
that's right, I'm agreeing with you.
But I guess what, Sam, you're reading into this is that advice from the public works director is probably the right thing to do here.
I would agree with that.
and, yeah, I mean, and if he's, the person who's going to ultimately have to repair that road, if it decides to erode faster because they've filled this and then not.
We can get a real dimension too,
Yeah.
because it might look like 60 and we've kicked around 60, but when you drop a tape on it, it could be 83, which
Yeah.
changes the
Okay,
narrative, so.
but this says 100.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
no,
I'm
he knows
just
that he's
saying though, for
yeah.
someone who's gonna opine and say
Yes,
80 is
absolutely.
good and 100, you know what I'm saying? So to get a real number, we'll get everything, we can submit that to you when we do our stuff.
Right,
so
and
that
we'll
you
let
can
the
take
Public
what you
Works
need to.
Director
Yeah.
look at all this, evaluate.
What
this.
section was that again?
801.2, item 3.
And just another thing, Jeff, that I don't see addressed here, it says excavation, but does that mean, what if it's backfilled? What if it's filled with foundation and cement? I mean, that's why the Public Works Director has to weigh in on it, because to me, this has a certain amount of ambiguity. What is it? Like if you were to dig a hole and leave it,
It's a lot different than filling it with a solid
That's my-
surface that's gonna
that's
do the
my
same
point.
as fill, yeah, yeah.
That's
Right, it
Totally
seems like
understand,
the number of projects that would fail this number 3 would be a lot. So I'm not exactly sure. It might be something eventually we want to kind of clarify.
We can at least provide that dimension for the Public Works to look at. I mean, it might be
That would be
something
great.
where he
Yeah,
looks
I
at it.
think
and goes,
that's-
Yeah, we should run it by
I
them.
would say it would just be a contingency thing.
And I would say, obviously, it's either, you can either give him just the dimension from that farthest corner that's closest to the road, or I'd give him the dimension from there and from the other corner that is a little bit longer, but give him both so he has an understanding that this thing is not parallel to the road, and make his evaluation from there.
Definitely.
While you're at it, put the other lot line, which is adjacent, the adjacent lot, distance from the building to the
Sure.
adjacent lot.
Okay.
I thought that the requirement for the permit actually had distance from the building to all lot lines, but maybe it doesn't.
I'll have to, he's the engineer, he put it together. I just do all the lipstick and makeup sort of stuff. He does all the meat and potatoes.
Got it. Okay, so 801.2, item 3, we'll have a contingency to seek input with a revised site plan from the Public Works Director. Does that seem fair?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Any other items from 801.2, removal of earth materials? Okay, 801.3, water quality. Any issues? Surf,
Shouldn't be relevant.
okay. Surface and stormwater drainage. Clear cutting. I didn't see a definition for clear cutting anywhere in the document, so I don't really know what constitutes clear cutting.
That means not leaving a thing standing.
One tree, and you
No,
cut
but I
it.
mean-
Is that clear cutting?
They had to remove a couple of trees to do a driveway, but they're
They're
replacing
leaving
some.
stand.
and-
I mean, our goal is to leave all of that tree line along the road, because that also tightens the soil. The more trees we take out,
Right.
the less the public works is gonna say you can keep it, so that all is in the envelope of, yeah.
Exactly, and it's screening, so. Nuisances, 801.6. Any, activities that may be taking place as a result of this building that might constitute a nuisance?
I hope not, no. No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Same work hours, same everything, just a larger building.
Yep.
Under lighting, is your lighting is mostly going to be down. You're not gonna,
No.
No, it's just floodlighting down, like the wall packs are like 15 or 30 degrees down and outwards, so.
okay. And
was in the
so
packet.
there should not be any issue with any of the lighting, like,
No light pollution for neighboring
No.
folk. no.
or to the roadway.
No, there's none on the back side of that building as well. There's only the 3 on the front with the garage doors, and there aren't even any on the sides for the
That's on the
access
south,
doors.
the south
Yeah,
side.
the south side, yeah, that's the only,
Don't you have a door on the,
we
north
do,
side?
but there isn't even a light over it. It's just
Don't you
an
need a light?
access door. I don't think so.
I think you might,
Do we need one?
I think so.
Okay. We'll do a change order.
Ask the code enforcement officer.
Do we have to have a light over the doors, egress
The
doors?
Egress door.
Because it's a storage building.
So you-
Uh-oh.
Just a door that
Yeah,
It's
just
an
a door,
egress door for the
yeah.
building. I think it needs to have a light.
It's not a residence, it's just an accessory structure, I think.
The one on the front stealing light from the 2 flood packs.
There should be
And then the
enough.
one on the left, that's the second access, isn't, but I wouldn't, it doesn't even have to be sprinkled or
Yeah,
anything, it's
I
just a
don't think
storage
that'll be an
building.
issue.
Okay.
Okay. And anyway, the lighting will not shine to the road and it will not
No,
be shining up.
no
That's-
pollution.
Even if you did put one downlight over the top of that side door, it's still the opposite side away from where the alarm comes in.
Yes, yeah, because it's pointing towards the farmhouse, yeah.
No, all the details on the lighting that they're buying.
Yep.
Talks about, I think that's what it's designed for.
Oh, yeah, for sure, just more
Dark sky.
whether or not there's, if you're
Some
driving
accessory structures.
towards Camden, and there was a light there, depending on where they were, and if it angled the wrong way, somebody driving would see that, and that's
Sure.
different than what they're used to now. But there's nothing on that wall, and even if there was a requirement over that wall, that door, like I was saying, it's on the opposite side from there, so I don't have any issues with lighting or concerns of, what that might impact on the drivers, what we got here, so. Looks good.
801.8, it's called exposed areas, and it has to do with somewhat of the activities that may be taking place. Any concern about that section? Or exposed machinery installations, sand and gravel extraction operations, used vehicles? Sorry, Jeff, you can just say lean forward.
I think they're going to actually improve the situation. You're gonna take some outdoor stuff and
Yeah.
put it inside the building, right?
It's gonna be a huge improvement to their current work standards.
You're also putting the garage doors away from the public view, so
That's correct.
that should be an improvement as well. Okay, moving on to 802, industrial standards. I didn't see any reason for concern here. I just had a question about whether it applied at all, and I think that's a question to the board more so. Does this, because of its use, have any kind of industrial dimension to it? Did anyone feel it did? Seems no.
No, sir.
Okay. And then parking, loading, and driveway standards. My only question here was whether there was an increase in the demand for parking because of the building, not because of what's going on in the golf course, just because of this building.
No, it's, there's no change in demand, it's the same crew.
Okay.
I don't believe they're.
This isn't
going to
in
cause
support of
anything.
it's not in support of like a doubling of the maintenance crew at the golf course or anything like
No,
that.
no.
It's
It's-
the same
I
number
think
of guys
just,
gonna be coming
I
in.
think that we've got an area that we're grading, and they get a lot of deliveries, so to have some parking areas, that's really a nice spot for a box truck to turn around, it's just to give them access to get in and out of the buildings.
Yep.
Otherwise, looking through this section, I found that basically everything that it's talking about is if there were a change or the relationship of the public way to the parking, coming off Park Street essentially, but that's not even being impacted. Is that right? We're basically keeping the same drive off
Yep.
Park Street.
It's like a maintenance-only road.
Yeah. So any other concerns for 803 from the board?
Nope.
Okay, like I said, I did not flag sections 804 through 812 as being appropriate or applicable. 813 was the only one, and that I hope is not, is the section on blasting. Is there any blasting that is going to take place in order to create this building?
We don't anticipate any.
Okay,
I mean, unless, there could be a big boulder in the ground, but
you don't know.
you don't know until you dig.
Yep. Okay, and anyway, there's a permit needed for that. So then, don't think you had any other sections that I flagged for this. Is there anything else anyone wanted to talk about in section 800 before we move on?
I mean,
ahead, Sam.
no, just the only piece that one of the things that we noted in the pictures was that you were getting ready to move the fuel tanks. And I do note that the new site plan shows them getting moved into secondary containment, which we noticed wasn't there in the first part of that. And just making sure that, again, with everything else, that making sure that that meets the current standards for containment for those tanks of that size, which you will do as we go through. I just wanted to make sure that it was caught and.
The tanks themselves are gonna be, when they transfer them, they'll be put inside the concrete tanks for two things. One is the secondary containment, the other is protection from vehicles.
Yes, exactly. Yep, no, I get it, I'm glad that it's there, it was one of the things we noticed, and I wanted to make sure we popped it up, and this would have been the section that it was mentioned, so, that's all, thank you.
Thank you. Before we move on, Scott, I just noted that you had mentioned 6:30 was your, you were available until 6:30? Sorry, I think you're muted.
Sorry, I can stay on for a little bit more.
Okay, thank you. So we're looking for as a finding of fact motion to accept section 800, general standards of performance, as approved for the application.
I will move to, approve section 800 with the contingency for section 801.2, item 3, with the Public Works Director's advice around the excavation, and with them providing the distances we need for making that.
Okay, seeking input from the Public Works Director. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Jan. Okay, any further discussion on 800? All in favor? 600. Thank you. Moving on, detailed performance standards, that's section 1000 of the land use ordinance. Okay. So section 1000 deals with landscape requirements and architectural review standards and parking lot design. I think we should probably go through each of those. So from the board, any issues with area landscape regulations 102? 1002.
I have none.
None. Okay, so one of the things that we talked about was the existing vegetation that basically provides the buffer between the building and the road would remain. It looks like some vegetation is going to be removed in direct proximity to the building itself. But I think we can trust what's drawn as being adequate, is my opinion, for that screening.
Yeah, I think
Does
so.
anyone have any other opinions on that?
Our goal is to take as little as possible. I mean, only what would damage the building if it was to fall, or,
Right.
you know, brush around the building
Right.
to work around the excavator. But yeah, keeping all that there is ideal.
Okay. And you did provide in the supplemental packet, some cedars providing a screening on the adjacent wall.
Yeah, it's the only view, it's the only elevation that you can see while driving down Park Street.
Towards Camden.
Yeah, towards Camden. And I'd put optional, I wasn't sure if what the board would be, what would you folks allow? If we could do like a staggered, because we put a window, it was a great idea to put a window in there, but if we put a blanket of cedars, then what's the point of having a window? So I think the cedars with the tan siding and the green roof, it's gonna be very similar colors. As you're driving by, it's not gonna, like it's a pink building with like, you know, a neon sign. If you wanna see a row of cedars, we'll do it, but ideally, if we could take the optional ones out. Plus, it'd just be easier to maintain the grass, and I think it would look nice not being a wall of cedars, but we will do whatever we need to appease, because we know we're using metal siding, so we're at your mercy.
If I could jump in here, I think I was at least one of the people that asked for those drawings of
Yep.
of that elevation with the planting, and I feel comfortable with leaving the optional ones out. I think it covers the side of the building nicely, and it would be fine.
Do you have a specific cedar type in mind here, or just a cedar?
Anything in particular? He's got the degree in it, I'm gonna let him, well, he'll spec something that's we wanna keep it at 16, 20 feet, so they'll have to be cut and pruned, so probably a
Yes.
tree that would grow well around 5 feet diameter to the height that we need it to grow to.
You showed 9 if you included the optional trees, and what's the dimension of the building? I'm sorry, I could probably look.
On that side,
Yeah.
I think it's
45.
45.
So that's
yeah.
5 feet on center. That's pretty tight spacing.
For right now, well, yeah, that's if you do an entire.
Right.
But again, I wasn't sure where you folks would sway with wanting to see the building covered up or not, so.
No.
I wanted to cover everything and then pull off what we could.
Yeah.
I also don't think we could be strict on like colors and windows and all that stuff, and then also say, oh, you need to
By the way,
Hide the
by the way,
window.
cover the entire.
Yeah. No, I.
We'll do it if we have to, but we really don't want it.
I
It's
don't-
a nice
I-
building.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense.
No, personally, I didn't think the optional layer was necessary. If you're gonna get something like an arborvitae or something, it's gonna put some width on it. And over time, it will be more natural. If you build a wall of trees, it's just gonna stand out as a wall of trees.
Exactly.
So,
Yes. I felt the diversity of species that the ordinance asked for was also not really germane to this. I mean,
No.
it doesn't make sense to have a different tree,
no.
No.
every other tree here. Any other concerns for the landscaping regulations 1002?
No, I think I just want to note that we were all okay with them removing the ones they showed
Yes.
were as
Thank you, Sam.
optional. So,
You can keep them as optional, we don't require it. Okay, so architectural review standards, 1003. So this goes through being visually harmonious and the sort of size and shape of the structure, the pitch of roofs, and the use of materials. So who'd like to start?
Well, I just want to say, I think the choice of colors is good, and I think that you've accomplished what we asked you to accomplish in that. To me, it's a good-looking, working building. Yeah.
We've put that color packet up, because the RSU 57, the school district that we've done work for, they're a green and white school, so all of their buildings are tan and green.
Yeah.
And they're really nice, like the trim's formed on site, it's a really nice package building. So it'll, even though it's metal, it looks really sharp, which is why we went with this contractor in this building.
Okay. Is the finish matte or glossy?
There might be a little shine to it because it's metal, but it's typically matte.
Okay.
It doesn't have a lot of reflection to it. You don't want it with the metal
No.
too, because it's gonna show every little wave and every little, like, every cold day, the wrinkles that'll
right.
pop up. No shimmer, please.
Yeah, no, I just, same, noting what we asked them to do from the pre-app to now, it looks fantastic. I don't have any other questions inside this area.
Okay. We did raise the issue of roof slope
Well, we did last time.
last time.
And we said it was encouraged, but
Right.
not absolutely required. So it is what it is.
And I mean, if you, the only time you'd see the slope is when you're driving towards it, and if you can tell the difference between a 4 and a 2 slope at
Good luck.
45 miles an hour going that way, good on you.
Yeah.
Like, you'd only see it from the gable end coming in.
I mean,
so.
if we held you to 412, then it's just going to become taller and we'll see more wall.
Yes.
And we were trying to see less.
Right.
It should be 412 and sided with cedar shapes.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll get right on it.
Yeah.
Yes. For the record, that's a joke.
Thank you.
Okay, building materials, roofs, what else was there? Visually harmonious. So I think, again, this is an improvement as to what's there now. And I think we're all in agreement that the materials are helping a lot. Awnings and canopies, I don't think there are any. Is that right? And it's not a linear commercial structure as it's described here. Any other concerns for architectural review standards from the board? Okay, parking lot design and landscaping, any concerns there? It's really a brief section. Auto sales, off-street parking required, we talked about. Outdoor boat sales and storage, I don't think they have any boats on a golf course.
Yeah, you should see people canoe on it all the time.
Oh, really?
When the river floods in the spring.
It does flood.
Yeah, it does.
Okay, so that's the end of section 1,000. So what I'm looking for is a finding of fact motion that the application has met the requirements for section 1,000.
So moved.
So moved by Jan.
I don't think there were any conditionals that we put out in this section.
No.
Nope, just the note that their optional trees are indeed optional.
Entirely optional, yes.
Entirely optional. Is there a second?
Second.
Sam. Any further discussion on section 1,000? Okay, voting, all in favor of approval? 600. Okay, and the rest of the ordinance deals with things that are permitted by the code enforcement officer in terms of the process for the applicant. So I think what we've done now is we've gone through the land use ordinance as it pertains. We do have a couple conditionals from section 1300. It was the subsurface wastewater application. There was the photographs, which we'd seen before, to be included in the final application. In section 800, it was to seek review from the Public Works Director on the removal of soil to create the building and vis-a-vis Park Street. And in section 1000, it was the optional to remove the trees. Did you have another one, Sam?
That was it.
Okay, that's it. Okay, so then what we're looking for is a finding of fact to approve or deny the application for the site plan for 50 Park Street. Finding of fact that with amendments, it,
Subject to the conditions.
subject to the conditions that we've outlined tonight.
Well, if you can help me stumble through the wording, I'll be the one to say, all right, motion to approve the project at 50 Park Street with the amendments in the sections previously mentioned. There.
Motion on the
Second.
table, seconded
Second.
by Jan. Any further discussion? Scott? No?
I-
Good, okay. Voting, all in favor? 600.
Okay.
Thank you.
And you've got the exceptions
Yep.
Marked.
nailed down, right?
Yes.
Okay, very
Yes.
good.
Okay.
Yes, we had findings of fact for each of these sections, so. So, are you guys clear as to what you have to do now?
Yeah,
Okay.
and it's on us. We'll get it to you when we're ready, and then we'll wait for you to sign off on it. and
You'll
then-
deal with Orion from
Okay,
here, and
perfect.
we'll just show up when everything's ready, and Orion will have checked it over himself.
Awesome.
With our concerns.
Cool.
Good.
Great. All
Good.
right, thank you very
We
much.
appreciate
Thank you.
y'all's time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
How are we doing, Scott Gazelle? You still there? Still with us?
I'm still here, but I'm going to have to sign off, so I
Okay.
apologize, but
I think
Well, thank you very much for attending.
Thanks, Scott.
Yeah, thanks for that,
We
Scott.
still have quorum, so we'll say goodnight. Okay, so, the last item on our agenda is consideration of ordinance amendments. And I trust that everyone's had a chance to look over these. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Now, all these changes were done by Orion, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and with the lawyer. Some of it was done pretty much by the lawyer.
With an attorney, yes.
Yeah, but otherwise all done by our
Yep.
All right. Actually, I have a question about this before we get started, which
Please.
has to do with kind of the last time we went through a bunch of land use ordinance changes and had a member of the ORC come to our meeting and ask why they hadn't been part of it. When you go to the ordinance review committee's page, they don't have any meetings or agenda stuff set up for this past year. Sorry, maybe I'm running into something that I shouldn't understand and know, but my point of this being,
Well, that's a committee I want to join.
very much so,
Resume.
but when you read, you know, the part about, if you go, what the actual ordinance review committee is and the page that says how it works, it says that they're pretty much where everybody kind of defers to, and after they have their chance to look at these changes and work it through their work plan and go through it, then it kind of comes to us and we have the public hearings part of it. But how is, we have this many of them and having not had any kind of input
Well, I
from
think
the ORC?
another way of looking at this, and I don't have an answer for you.
Okay, I'm just,
But I think another way of looking at this is that these are items that are germane to, that are in the land use ordinance that are germane to the planning board. And so we definitely are somebody who should review them. You don't contest that, right?
Right.
oh, no, for sure.
Okay, so it's simply,
Just a matter of
What's
of
the
order of
ordinance review
operation. That's because it seems like
Yeah.
if you read all the things that are available, it says that it's not us first.
I think there's a select board meeting in a week or so. You could probably go and ask the question again.
I mean, I'm not trying to get out in the middle of anything here, but I will pull this part up. Right, I mean, so timeline for revisions, Town of Rockport Land Use Ordinance, the ideal schedule adopted by the Select Board in '06. This time of year, ideas for ordinance revisions are forwarded to the planning office from the Select Board, Planning Board, Zoning Board, and Ordinance Review Committee. September, the planning office schedules a work session with representatives of the aforementioned groups. Proposed work plan is refined and prioritized. Late September and early October, the work plan is presented to the Select Board. And then if all that goes through, then the Ordinance Review Committee works on the work plan through the winter to March, and then sends it up to us, and then we have our meeting, I'm guessing then, and then it all goes through. Do we not do this anymore?
I don't think we've done it. We haven't done it for the past couple of years that I've been here. We've just done it.
Scott, you want to help us with some history on this?
I think I'm gonna stand back away from this one. I can tell you this much, the ordinance committee sometimes would go off on a different track from what was trying to be accomplished. But, as a rule, they did okay.
Okay.
But they are a committee, and
They are still in existence?
And I've seen the planning board at one point in time deny everything the ordinance committee had done. And I haven't been to an ordinance committee meeting for a long time myself. I used to attend those back in 16, 18 years ago.
Okay.
But I just see the results.
Yep.
And I think Orion's seen some of the results, and it's a different path that I think he's on also. So there may or may not be value. I don't know.
Okay, I think my question has more to do with just, are we getting anything wrong mechanically in terms
No,
of,
we're not. I mean,
this is all just recommendation, and I guess that's my piece, right?
no, I mean, we're functioning the way that Orion has asked us to do it, which is to review it vis-à-vis the land use ordinance, because that's our role, is sort of the people who are charged with reviewing applications and not quite enforcing, but like being aware of what's in the land use ordinance. So it is in our purview. I think whether the process includes the ORC either before us or after us is like a question that's sort of beyond this committee's concern. I mean,
But I think also the ORC would be glad to have something in whole cloth.
yeah.
Okay.
I always think,
If Orion were here, he'd have some thoughts. That's all I could say. So save your
I
question
think
for
of the
next
ORC
meeting.
as serving the select board's interest.
Mm-hmm.
That is, that we come up with changes that we want, and we give them to the select board. And if the select board has lots of things on their agenda, they give that to the ORC, and the
Right.
ORC gives it a thumbs up or a thumbs down, and why. And then the select board decides whether they're gonna put it on the warrant or not.
Right. So if there were some like dog catcher regulations, then it may go to the ORC if they had that
Yep.
expertise.
Well, so
Well, like-
I'm just reading through the town's website
Yep.
for this piece, and
Yep.
forgive me, because that's what I've got for information, but it says the material that the ORC does is merely advisory in nature. The select board may still elect to remove from consideration or to draft proposed ordinance amendments even after the ORC completes its work. However, the board has historically shown considerable deference to the ORC, especially with respect to changes proposed to the land use ordinance. Upon review of the ORC material, the select board, along with members of boards and committees, such as the planning board in the case of the land use ordinance amendments, then conduct formal public hearings to determine whether or not to recommend approval to the voters at the next town meeting. That mechanism doesn't sound like what's happening anymore. And so I guess my question is, did anybody, like, who's allowed to change that, or is it all just kind of by suggestion?
Well, yeah, and that is, I mean, that is just a narrative on our webpage. That's not like
No, and
the
I-
town's ordinance.
Nope, and I get that, and
Yeah.
I'm trying to kind of feed through, and I'm lacking anything short of ordinance.
Yeah,
And
I
like it
think,
says, it
I
goes into
think,
it.
and I don't want to put words in Orion's mouth, he's not here, but I think what his position is that these are land use ordinance things, so to have the ORC be reviewing them and us reviewing them, we're the ones that are intimately familiar with the land use ordinance, and they are less so.
Right.
So it's like, what's the point? Like, why go through this committee of people who aren't using it on a monthly basis? They're just looking at it whenever something comes up.
Also, we have no dotted lines on our corporate structure. There
Right.
are no committees that talk to each other. All the committees report back through their liaison to the select board, and the select board uses the various committees as it chooses to. So I don't think that we don't send things to the ORC.
No.
We send things through Orion and through our select board representative, which is
Yeah.
now Joe.
John.
As to, not Joe.
John.
John, as to what they're gonna do with it is up to them. So I think, I wouldn't worry about it.
Yep.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Look, if somebody on the ORC committee feels that they are being,
Well, I mean, do you guys
sidelined?
Do you guys remember we had one in our meeting, like in March, who
Yeah.
sat there, and I do not remember his name for the
Neither
life
do
of
I.
me, but he was there and was fairly upset that we had not had them involved with it. So I'm trying to just make sure that we are not doing this again, or if we are, we should maybe let them know that we're gonna do it again, so they have a chance to have at least a say, or is that not
well,
the case?
well, we don't,
We're not doing anything wrong.
We're not doing anything
No, no,
wrong.
but
also,
I'm
where
not
did-
trying to do anything wrong. I'm just trying to making sure we're not trying to upset anybody intentionally or not intentionally. So
That's right.
okay.
No, I mean, we have no dotted line relationship to that.
I'm guessing there's a lot of this that I'm being left understood, but I don't understand yet because I'm new and young.
Where
but
did you see the description of this process on the town website?
Under the ORC page, under Rockport, like
Under the ORC?
Jeff, could you take that page?
Rockport
off?
Marine Governance
Committees.
Committees or Ordinance Review Committee.
No, I meant, I was
Ordinances?
joking. I just meant to take it
Governance?
off, take it off the website.
Town Committees
I
and
was just joking.
Commissions, Ordinance Review Committee. Sorry,
Just so
I-
we can-
Oh, there you go.
all that to say that I'm happy to get started. I just wanted to make sure that we weren't.
What?
I'm okay.
Apologies.
Yeah, you want to take care of that?
Yeah,
Okay,
I don't think we should have any reason to hesitate.
noted.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And also, again, if Orion were here, he'd lend some light on this, that we
No,
can't-
and I apologize for that piece. This is the first time it showed up since this spring. That's
Yeah.
all.
Okay, okay, so let's go through these in the order, unless anyone has any reason not to, that they are in the document. So 300 definitions, the first one. So we're adding a definition for cellar to just refer to basement. Conditional use is removing some words, or conditional use. Commercial greenhouse is just distinguishing itself from another greenhouse. I wonder about the word, it says, that will be sold for commercial consumption. Whether, when you buy plants from a commercial greenhouse, you're using them in a commercial way, but,
Isn't it just that will be sold commercially?
yeah. I mean, once you sell it, it's kind of a commercial
Right,
activity,
right.
right?
By definition.
That will be sold,
Yeah.
full stop. Also, I think we're used to having Orion here to like note our changes here. He's gonna review this video, so he can just do them
Oh, poor man.
after this.
Sold commercially.
Just make sure we lean into the microphones then.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly.
Scott?
If I may,
Yes,
Please.
sir.
some of these definitions are actually related to the fees that get charged, such as a full basement, half basement, and a cellar, and how it all comes together on that actual building permit application that we have to deal with the fees. In the case of greenhouse, everybody's got one in the backyard, so we have to know what's commercial and what's not commercial,
Okay.
just for the fees.
Yep.
And I'm sure Orion's got more than that, but that's what's important to us.
Okay, so it's just about the selling of whatever you're growing. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There were some comments here, conditional use, condition not needed in its own definition. That's Jan. So you're just saying recommend take the word out?
Yeah, basically.
Okay, yeah, I agree with that. And you had the same comment about commercial greenhouse,
Yeah.
even without a building.
Well, so yeah, I guess that was your question, right? Is if somebody sets up a farm stand or a vegetable stand in the front of their house,
Right.
out of the stuff that they grow in their greenhouse, does that make it a commercial greenhouse?
Yeah, there's a whole
ball of wax you're gonna open with that.
Well, and I wonder if that's why they use the phrase commercial consumption, meaning like if you're selling it to a commercial entity as opposed to selling it to individuals. And I think that might be what they're talking about,
Oh,
when they
maybe.
use those words.
I hadn't thought about it that way.
Oh,
That-
sorry, I can scoot.
Yeah, but you could have a pretty substantial greenhouse, but not sell the commercial.
Yeah, I think it's more about
think
intent. What is the greenhouse for? You know, if it's for raising your own things and you occasionally sell one for $3 to a neighbor or you give them away, that's different than if you're Green Thumb and you have greenhouses.
Right.
I think that's what it's meant to regulate as opposed to, but I don't know how to
Well, I think
phrase
if
it.
that's what it's meant to, but if we're already unclear about what it's meant to do, and
Well,
we're trying
yes,
to have a
I'm
clear definition, then maybe this definition isn't as clear as we all thought it would be. And
That's
that
it.
maybe this isn't the right version of this definition.
That was my thought.
So do we have any thought of how to adjust it so that we know?
Well, we have to know what we intend to do here.
Right, I guess that's taking a step back. It's hard to define all of these things without clear purpose.
Well, so
It-
he just gave us a very clear purpose behind this, is to define these things so that they can assign the correct fees to them when they're setting up the permit, right? So a greenhouse in somebody's backyard for a permit for just a greenhouse to have is different than somebody setting up a greenhouse that will become a commercial entity.
Right.
And we're trying to clarify those definitions so that when somebody has something that is clearly a commercial greenhouse and not a residential one, we have the definition in place so that they can use to assign
Scott,
the fee.
if I want to build a greenhouse in my backyard, just to have a greenhouse in my backyard, I have to pay a fee?
It's a structure, so you would have a permit for it.
I have
Unless
a
it's 8 by
permit for
10.
which then involves, and so there's a difference between is it based on the size of the greenhouse or the use of the greenhouse?
It's the use.
It's use.
It's
Oh,
the
interesting.
So we're trying to
To me,
define the
the
use.
question
Yes,
here,
and you,
to me, the
we also
question
have
here
to
is,
consider the right to farm. I mean, we got state statutes that we're playing with here too. Same with signage. There are state laws, so we have to kind of weave our own path.
So the wording that we have here that is proposed in the red change is what was created by Orion and the lawyer together?
Yes.
yeah, but are we talking about the structure or are we talking about a business?
Well, it's a funny thing, in this
That's the
definition,
question.
it says structure, so a commercial greenhouse is a structure, and then it says this activity. A structure isn't an activity. So it's like.
That's
how-
what I'm saying. So a commercial greenhouse is a business
Yes.
that may have greenhouses, greenhouse structures, and they are raising plants and
No, so that's a greenhouse business,
for
but this
commercial
piece,
purposes.
it's talking about a structure dedicated to the cultivation of plants that will be sold for commercial consumption.
Not commercial, and why commercial
No, that's-
consumption?
That's, I think, that
They
will be
will-
sold.
Is it?
It'll
Yeah.
be sold.
Again.
Period. We don't need to say.
But the activity of being sold for commercial consumption is the part that they're talking about, not the structure. They're saying that activity.
Yeah, but commercial
I understand.
consumption, if I go and buy something at Plants Unlimited,
House.
that's not commercial consumption.
I think that they're uncomfortable in writing the sentence that ends in sold, that will be sold. There's like, oh, sold for what? It's like, oh, for,
I mean, isn't-
mealy mouthed.
Sorry, isn't this more about a greenhouse that is, registered to a business? Like, that's essentially what you guys are trying to do. If it's a greenhouse that's being used by a business.
Right, so here's the piece that they're gonna try to figure out. Like, I have a big rural lot. I could set up a very large greenhouse in the back of my lot and sell what I grow in that to a distributor.
That's a
Right,
business.
that is a commercial greenhouse.
Yes.
But I have it in a place that is very residential and does nothing, but like with the piece of having to get it out of there and unloaded, there's pieces around considerations for like how the truck gets in and out, how the pieces is in the residential neighborhood, like things that they have to be able to permit and get into their section for. It's
Yeah.
not the small, like, put little things in, but there are places, again, and the commercial consumption piece of this is, your intent is you're gonna offload the things that you have two businesses, not individual people walking up and down on your road for like a lemonade stand or a roadside stand. Like, that's not what.
But how does it, my question is, how does this apply to a farm that's selling to the community? It's
if
about
the-
the permitting fees. And so I think there's the commercial consumption, if that's truly what we're doing this for, or trying to, then that's one thing. If this also applies to like a farm that's building a big greenhouse that's then selling at the farmer's market or something,
And we've just recently done that.
right, then,
Yeah, yes,
then
we
you
just- we
would
just
want
approved
that
one and never-
included in
and
this
never questioned
definition,
it.
right?
Right.
Or is that a different,
Well,
or not? I don't know.
I'm not really sure that this is green to me. Orion didn't give this to me as soon as he should have. Because I can see some flaws around that, and I'm sure that he'll fix those.
If I may make a suggestion,
Go ahead.
put this off until Orion gets back.
Well, we can do that with this one, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, anything that we can't figure out,
Yeah.
we're spending way too much time on one
Yeah,
little
sure.
thing here.
And we need.
We'll never get home.
Yeah,
Right,
So-
yeah.
I agree with that.
Okay.
I think we can lodge our notes here for the recording. Orion can come prepared for
There you
the
go.
next one.
Orion, please
Right, we
work this
can't give
out.
a definition to something if it's meant to be a very specific definition that we
Right.
don't know about. I don't.
Right.
All right, so we will, out of the definitions to amend, any issues with any of the changes other than commercial greenhouse?
No.
I can't remember what I wrote, and you'll have to read it. If
Yeah.
it sounds interesting to
Yeah.
you when you read it, let me know.
Well, the next comment you had is, under outdoor boats, sales and storage, you said, or seasonal parentheses storage. A lot or lots used for the display and sale of boats, ships, not associated with the
I
manufacturer.
mean, we have places where people store their boats over the winter.
Yeah,
And I'm wondering if that is part of what we were talking about, seasonal
Yes.
storage.
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think this is inclusive of seasonal storage.
Okay,
Yeah,
that answers my question.
okay. And then we're adding definitions here, crawl space, so that's basically distinguishing it from basements and cellars. Certificate of occupancy, I'm surprised it wasn't defined. Seems like an important thing to know what it is. Greenhouse, to differentiate it from commercial greenhouse. License and licensee, a thing that you obtain and the person who obtains it. And victualler, that's a new one. To distinguish it from the peddler. A word first used in 1377, Jen points out.
Yes, Oxford English Dictionary, I looked
Yes.
up. I love that word, I mean, victuals, I mean, it's just,
Victuals,
it's a great
Vittles.
word. Yeah,
How's this?
Vittles.
yeah,
Is
it's a
that
great
pronounced
word.
victual or vittle?
Yeah,
Well-
well, said victuals.
Depends on how many letters you want to pronounce
Yeah.
a line over, yes.
And the British version has two L's, I found. So,
That's them.
Oh, that's complicated.
I think in terms of cleanliness, we can just, I don't know. Since you brought this up, Sam, I'm going to put it on you. Should we pull out the definition of commercial greenhouse and recommend to the select board the rest of it? Or should we just not recommend the
I
whole
would,
thing?
well, I wouldn't recommend it until we have a discussion with Orion and try to
Yeah.
understand what he and the lawyer were talking about here.
Okay.
Because the way that it's written is confusing, I think.
Okay.
And I just don't know how inclusive he wants greenhouse to be. So, I don't know.
I don't know what the timeline for this is, for the November ballot.
For the November ballot?
Yeah,
Oh, that's a joke. I can't help with that.
yeah, I know.
Sorry.
I think the more things that we could approve for
We're not-
recommendation to the select board.
This is not an all or
better.
nothing.
Right, that's what
you
I'm
know?
trying to say.
Yeah, we could pull something out and say, let's make it for next June, for that matter.
Yeah,
We'll have no victual sales between now and then that we have to worry about.
I don't think we're stuck on victuals. It's really just a commercial greenhouse. But we could exclude that.
No real reason to add greenhouse to then if we were gonna not add commercial greenhouse. Is that correct?
No, I think you can still have it. You could still have the definition for greenhouse and not change the definition for commercial greenhouse. So let's see, the definition that currently exists for commercial greenhouse is a greenhouse engaged in the raising for sale, flowers, vegetables, trees, and shrubs. This activity includes plant stock grown outdoors, etc. Is there?
Right, and I think this is the piece that, because they're trying very specifically to say that it's a structure
Yeah.
versus, so it doesn't sound like it is
Peddler, or a yard sale, or,
well, very so much as getting into the issue that he said that like the Green Thumb is a greenhouse, that's a commercial greenhouse because
Yes.
they have them there and across, but these guys are trying to not have that defined as something loosely like that. They could be interpreted as that's only talking about things like the Green Thumb. They are talking specifically about the structures and then their intended use. And I think that trying to figure out the intended use part is where we as a team are sticking point. So I think it needs to be shifted so that we understand that it is a structure. If we say a greenhouse is a structure and a commercial greenhouse is a greenhouse engaged in the raising of sale, then that becomes two very different things, and it actually exacerbates the problem by making it more that like a greenhouse is a structure and a commercial greenhouse is seemingly more like referring to the business as opposed to the structure.
what are you gonna do with the guy who has nothing but row houses, plastic? They're not greenhouses.
Oh, I don't
Yes.
really want to answer that piece now. I'm
No,
just
I
trying
know-
to figure
I know-
out
no, I know you
if
don't. I don't- yeah, I know you
leaving
don't.
greenhouse out needs to come out with the change.
It
to-
goes
know you
on
don't
to
wanna
I
say
think it's-
that the activity
can't.
includes plant
Well,
stock grown outdoors,
Yeah.
you know? So that, without a structure. A commercial greenhouse is a business, it's not a structure.
Right.
It's a business that may use.
But that's what we're trying to adjust the
A
definition.
structure is anything built or placed in or on the ground. And
Yeah.
it has to meet property line setbacks, it has to meet height dimensions, density, and on and on and on. That keeps it a structure. The rest of it is the use, what you're using it for. Are you filling paint cans, or are you tearing down sheds inside of it?
Right.
So,
But I think you can't define it as both
Well,
a
it's-
structure and an activity.
I think it just needs to be embellished
Yeah.
considerably.
Well, if a person a private person builds a greenhouse, and many people have them, isn't that so what's the difference between a commercial greenhouse and a greenhouse?
That's what we're trying to lay out
$50.
here.
Intended use.
It's intent.
Well, if you, okay, so if we,
Right, so why would we take out I don't understand why we would need to take out the greenhouse definition.
right, I don't either.
Without,
Just because it talks about it being a structure versus the other one not being changed to a structure. I just didn't know if it'd be more confusing. To
Well, no,
add
because
in
if
without
you
making the
kept
adjustment.
the definition for greenhouse and you eliminated the change to commercial greenhouse would then refer to greenhouse, which is a structure. So it kind of applies to both of them.
All right. Well, there we are.
I think that it doesn't do much harm if we just exclude commercial greenhouse
The
for
modifications
now.
For now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
approve the rest of it.
Fine.
Thank Jimmy.
Okay. So can we get a motion for this section to,
Approve, a motion that we approve to the section,
Definitions.
I was gonna say, I get this piece. Chapter 300 definitions, with the removal of the change for commercial greenhouse as presented.
okay, so we're recommending this to the select
Yeah.
board.
Is that what I meant to say?
Do you want to try again?
Oh, goodness. Motion that we recommend this to the select board minus the change for commercial greenhouse.
Sounds good. Second.
Yes.
I second that.
Got it from Tom. All in favor? 500. Okay, moving on. Next section is what, 500? 500, chapter 500. Okay. Changes in non-conforming lot structures and uses. So it's basically just adding a reference to 1412 in lieu of 1416.4 and 1416.5. I didn't see any issue with this. The only comment here is Jan's, it says colon, not period.
Yep.
Oh, right there, okay. So it's just a typographical thing. Any other issues with this? Can I get a motion to recommend to the select board the modifications to chapter 500 with the modifications shown?
So moved.
So moved, second.
Seconded by Jan, moved by Sam, seconded by Jan. Okay, any further discussion? All in favor? 500. Okay, next one is chapter 600. So this is to remove all of this reference to which adopted codes, and to amend, to amend it to add some changes and instead refer to the Maine Uniform Building and Energy Code. Let's see. I don't see any comments here. Oh, there's one down there. Language by attorney. One comment that I had here was at the end of it, it says to add before section 601, the town of Rockport adopts and enforces the Maine Uniform Building and Energy Code. Something that we should be aware of here on the board is that Rockport really doesn't have a choice in what we adopt and don't adopt for law. It's governed by the state. I would say, and I know it says here language provided by attorney, I would say that we exclude the word adopt, adopts and, because we don't really have a choice. However, what we do have a choice in, as the code enforcement officers know, is because Rockport's a town under 4,000 population, we do not actually have to enforce the energy code. So it is a choice that that we have here and that the select board will have and the town will have to enforce the energy code. It is the law of the land, so all buildings in Rockport being built or modified do have to comply with the energy code, but whether it's enforced by the code enforcement officers is another matter. Does that make sense to everyone?
It
Yes.
does, and personally,
sense
I
to
would think
me.
we should agree to adopt it, meaning we should say that our code, we are expecting our code enforcement officer to enforce it.
Enforce it. That's the decision we're making, is whether we want to enforce it or not.
Yes, yes. And I
Can you
think,
enforce something that you have not adopted?
We can't, well, that's what I'm saying, is we cannot adopt any other code.
right,
We can only
choose to not.
use Maine Uniform Building Code. The Energy Code, which is part of the Maine Uniform Energy Building Code, Building and Energy Code, is an optional for enforcement for towns under 4,000 population in the state of Maine. But it's still the law, so any building has to be built to that code. So it's adopted statewide, whether we choose to or not. So it's like saying, I choose to follow the law. It's like, no, you have to follow the law. Like, it's not a choice. Like, you have to. We can choose to enforce the energy code or not. And that's kind of between,
Do we want to remove the adopts and?
I would remove the adopts and myself.
Anybody else?
It just confuses things.
But that, does it, I don't have it in front of me, does it then say that we are, I can't read it. Does it then say that we are in favor of it and we wish to enforce it?
Well, what it's saying is that the town of Rockport enforces the Maine Uniform Building and Energy Code, MUBEC.
That's what I want.
Okay.
That's what I want.
Scott?
Currently, it says MUBC. We don't have the energy code in there. It is for the state and for people to do, but we just don't enforce it. But we do say, you know, there is an energy code too, and it comes with a cost.
My concern, Scott, is in the odd case where somebody wants to build a house as inexpensively as they can, and they know that we're not enforcing it, and so they build it to not meet the state energy code. When they go to sell the house, the other guy has an engineer come in, and the engineer says, this house doesn't meet state code. You shouldn't buy it, or you shouldn't be selling it, or somebody could sue you, or something like that. So I think that, I think we should enforce it. I think that especially given the state of the universe, I think that we should emphatically say that we accept and enforce this code, even though we don't have to.
Noted.
That's just an opinion. Just an opinion.
We're only 400 souls away from being required to enforce it, so it's kind of,
We could wait it out and see what happens.
Baby boom is coming.
yeah.
And of course, the state did that, 4,000, for a reason. It's because they could not get the public to play ball. Because that energy code is gonna cost a lot of money for you to build a house and follow the energy code thoroughly.
Yes. Yes, and I presume if you remodel or if you sell a house, it needs to meet the code?
The state
Says
has
so.
the state has their law,
Yeah.
but they don't require us to enforce that unless we decide to do that.
Yeah.
So if we decide to do that, that's gonna put a lot more price to the building permits, and it's gonna put
Right.
a lot more onto the code officers.
Here's a hypothetical. Here's a hypothetical. If the town itself decided to remodel or add on to a building that the town owns, or build a new building the town owns, and the town did not enforce the energy code, then hypothetically, it could be built not meeting the requirements of the energy code,
Agreed.
and it would pass. The townsfolk would then have the right to sue the town for having built a building that does not meet state law.
Yes, and I think that the reason that the state made this 4,000 rule was a typical political move to try and force the anger down on somebody else. That's all.
Right. Yes. In a perfect world, it would be enforced statewide, so there wouldn't be this ambiguity of adoption and
You are
enforcement and all
And they
that.
are working on that, even as we speak,
Yeah.
to make it statewide and all enforceable, but they've got their hands full.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, given that it isn't currently required to be enforced, and if the real-world outcome of enforcing it is increasing the cost of permitting and construction of buildings and houses, do we want to voluntarily start enforcing this any sooner than we have to in order to try to get?
Well,
If getting affordable housing is one of the things that we've been trying to push and get across through, making moves to by our own code enforcement officers' estimation will increase the cost of doing these things.
but it's like,
I assume that this was
Is that something-
decided by someone.
Is that
That
something
it's
we want
not
to
our
recommend?
decision.
Sam, it's an incredible problem. It's a moral problem that you raise. You were absolutely right.
I guess my question is, do we want to recommend that we enforce the energy code, or do we want to recommend that we enforce just the Maine Uniform Building Code?
Here's what I'm going to do as my own wiggle route, my own wiggle is, I'm going to suggest that the planning board votes to enforce. And it then becomes up to the select board whether they want to make it a warrant article or want to eliminate it. And then, so I will sleep better at night knowing that Denise Munger will be awake worrying about what she's doing to the planet. Okay? So that's mine. Your point, Sam, is absolutely right. And it is antithetical to the way that we ought to be operating. We ought to be making affordable housing that's actually affordable. But we also ought to be trying to save what we can save. It's hard.
Yep,
It's hard.
understood.
Yeah.
If I asked you point blank, what do you think? Enforce it or not, Scott, what do you say?
Well, let me ask you
But also,
a sub-question
can I
of
stop
that.
This?
I can't. I'm not certified in the energy code. He can.
Well, let me ask the question then of Andrew.
Hang on, wait.
Hold on, let me ask the question then of Andrew. How much does it take to actually review plans and projects for energy? Is that like a big task? Is that,
It's,
He asked me. I wouldn't say it's a lot more work, but it is going to increase the cost to build a home.
not from the builder or the owner, but from your office?
It's another piece of the puzzle. It's another inspection. I mean, so there is more time involved with that, for sure.
Okay,
Yep, and verifying that what they're putting in for insulation, what they're doing for windows, air leak tests, that's all part of it. It does add some to our work, for sure. Yep. The idea behind the energy code is not to increase the cost to build a home, but over a time span, reduce the cost of fossil fuels, energy, all that together. So the idea is you pay a little more upfront.
You save it.
In 20 to 30 years, you get it back.
Right.
It's kind of like putting solar panels on a roof. You pay up front, but you slowly, the cost, you pay that off. That's the idea. The other thing is if you build a house to the energy code and you, 20 years from now, you go to sell it and they say, well, is this built to the energy code of 2000, whatever adoption we have now, 15? You say, no, I didn't follow that. Then they go, well, I don't want to buy your house because it's going to cost me, when I look at your oil bill, your propane bill, your energy costs, it's going to be higher than one that is built to the energy code.
Yep.
You pay now or pay later.
Yeah.
And when it comes to building a home and making it affordable, will it increase the cost of a home to build? Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was using that as an extreme piece of this part, and I
Sure.
used it to kind of get the conversation going in one
but
direction.
every 6 years, if I may say this, we have to buy the new set of manuals. Because every 6 years, the state is required to update that code. So 30 years from now, you've got to know when that house was built, to know if it was built by that code. And those blow door tests don't come any cheaper either.
Nope. But more common.
No,
Yeah.
and what will happen
Well-
is home inspectors will learn to look for it, to warn buyers that the house is up to code or not up to code.
Yeah, there'd have to be a lot more attention
Yeah.
paid to it. Yeah.
It's just one more piece.
No, I mean, it's an interesting philosophical discussion that we're engaged in, but I think we're just being asked to approve this definition, and I would not be comfortable giving any recommendations by the planning board, having not looked at a sentence of the energy code. I mean, I don't know, how would we even begin? Well, we could begin if we wanted to put that onto the agenda and recommend or not recommend enforcing the energy code. That's a whole different discussion that we need to research. And, I think if someone has decided, the select board, I'm presuming, to enforce the energy code, and I think we just need to put a definition in the land use ordinance to it.
I don't think this is coming from the select board. I think this is coming from the town office, going through us to the select board, so we're the
They're not
first stop.
instigating this change.
No.
if then I guess,
Right, and so they're saying this is their piece, and it's us to, whether or not we recommend what is written here to go to the planning board, whether you agree with it or not, but like, that's the recommendation part of this. Being able to make a recommendation to or not enforce, if you can't make a recommendation to say no, because you haven't read the energy code, then I think by that rationale, it'd be kind of hard to make one that says do.
I guess my point is that it seems like this has already been decided. Maybe it hasn't been decided by anyone.
That's why we're here talking about it at length.
Well, I'm not talking, the decision to enforce it has been decided, correct?
No,
No.
we're doing it. We're the first stop.
Then we need information on the energy code and permitting fees and all of this stuff. I mean, how do we say, yes, we should enforce it, or no, we shouldn't, when all we have is basically an acronym and nothing else to,
That's, we're going down a very deep rabbit hole.
right.
I mean,
And so
we
I
need-
think this,
Oh, I agree.
Orion made some decisions here about how these rules should be modified, or these policies should be modified. And I think before we go in getting into deep philosophical discussions about this, we should either take a look at it and see whether it's like grammatically correct and it makes some kind of sense and proceed, or else we should wait and have a protracted meeting with him.
Well, I think, okay, so this sort of similar thing that I keep thinking about is if you had a town that had a police office and you had speed limits posted through town that was 25 miles per hour, but the police office did not enforce speed limits, and people regularly just drove 60 through town because they said, well, I know I'm in Rockport and they don't enforce this law, so I can just drive 60. It's still illegal to do. Just because you're not going to get caught and fined for it doesn't mean that you shouldn't be doing it. Like, it's kind of equivalent to this. You must build, if you're building a new building, the state law says you must build a building that complies with the energy code. And we're just saying, are we going to allow people to get away with not doing so? That's
I mean,
where
that is
we are.
A very different way of talking about it.
Right, and we're, like I said, less than 400 people away from having to enforce it.
Yep.
That's all this comes down to. We don't really need to look at the energy code, in my opinion, because it's on the books. Like, everybody needs to comply with it.
We've gotten into that same difficulty about the building codes. That where we didn't have to, we were not responsible for enforcing it. And even though it was the law of the state, and then you have unscrupulous contractors going and
Right,
taking shortcuts.
Right.
And ending up with inferior structures.
right. Yes, Sam, you had to blow up or something.
Just try to go the other, I mean,
Okay, so are we ready to at least have a vote, or?
I think we can probably vote.
Okay, so there'd be a vote to recommend. Were there any other items that we should look at in this section 605? Because that was the primary thing. I think the rest of it was minor changes. Genders of code enforcement officer and certificate of occupancy being spelled out. Designees from the fire chief. Any other issues? The section? Hearing none. Okay, so I guess what we'd be looking for is if we're in favor to recommend this to the select board or to not recommend this to the select board. Motion either direction. And then we can do a vote.
I think you should put up a motion to accept it, the same as you put up a motion for everything else to accept the change. And then if we wish to not accept it, we vote against it, rather than trying to, asking to manipulate the motion that comes off the floor.
Right, so
Okay, so
Is
I'm
there
looking for a
is there
motion.
to
Is there a
accept-
motion to
Recommend.
recommend the changes as noted in the document before us to the select board for chapter 600?
so moved.
So moved by Sam. Is there a second?
I would second that.
Seconded by Rob. Any further discussions on the modifications to the land use ordinance, chapter 600? All in favor to recommend? 3, against, 2, abstaining, 0, 3, 2, 0. Motion passes.
What's next?
Next one is fire prevention and protection. So, the first part is to add to chapter 600 or create a new chapter in land use ordinance, not sure. Fire prevention and protection. So this is basically, it seems, providing authority to the fire chief to be able to inspect buildings. There's a number of comments here from Jan. Okay, so first comment was, why this does deal with who is in charge of administration. I think it belongs in a new section 800, general standards of performance. That was you.
That's me, yes. Because this is not an administration, it's not dealing with administration, only it's saying that the fire department's in charge of this. The rest of it is what you can, what is required to prevent, to try and prevent fires, and who's responsible for it, and so forth. And so to me, it belongs in the section of building codes and things like that. So I like what's written there, I just don't think that that's the right place for it. That's all.
Okay. Any other thoughts on that from the board? This is all new, so can we find in that chapter 800 that it makes sense, makes more sense there or in 600? Oops. I think this is like a concern of Orion's more than even ours, which
Right,
is
I
to
guess I was
organize
just,
the
I was wondering,
thing.
I kind of agree, it doesn't seem to match what's in 600, but also,
I mean,
think the
600,
definitions are fine, where Orion wants to put them, I don't. think that's-
600 deals with application, certificate of occupancy, inspection of rental dwelling units, code enforcement officers' duties, legal actions, violations. I can see like half of this is
Right,
administrative and half of it's general performance.
Right.
So it kind
If
of
it
could
could
go
be
either way.
divided out and put it in an appropriate place.
Yeah, but I don't know where to divide it. Again, this
But it
is
seems like Orion's also.
another discussion that'd be great to have Orion present for.
Yes.
If only we'd held this meeting yesterday.
I think you'll find he's just trying to define two different kind of disciplines, like the code office and the fire department. I think that's the only reason why it was, he
Yes.
created
Yeah.
the 600, just to keep them separated so they don't, it isn't a commingled kind of thing.
Yeah.
Do you think, Scott, do you think that maybe this should be a separate statute, not part of the land use ordinance on fire, a statute on fire prevention? I mean, we don't cover police work.
But code enforcement's in there.
Well, but, yes, they are.
Actually, I think you'll find under the state statutes that code enforcement officers are to be building inspectors. It's been on the books forever, long before we had building codes. There was a standard that a code enforcement officer had to certify buildings, any town that had a population of 2,000 or more. So that was my first introduction into doing certificates of occupancy. And right along with that, there was the fire chief that was written into Rockport's ordinance, which I think is still there, would also go along and do the certification, which has happened often in the past. Now there's a lot more to it, because it's not just a building standard, which is still in the statute, but now I have to do a lot more because of the building codes that really intensifies everything. And with the life safety codes being a whole different set of codes with some correlation between the two, it gets to be really interesting of doing this thing, and he is.
There it is. You wanna look through it. It's a good read.
Yeah, you can spend a half a day to find out how big a window has to be in that book, and you can spend a quarter of the day in the building code book.
Scott, I know you're addressing Jan, but the microphone is not picking you up when you look this way.
Right.
Oh, Scott.
When Scott was talking
Oh,
this
Scott, when you
direction,
turn this way, you look away from where your mic was, and then,
we know because Jeff starts wandering around his
I
room.
probably didn't mean to be.
no, there we go.
Yep.
So there are two codes that we're trying to bring together in the ordinance.
Yep.
And they are similar in a lot of aspects, but not everything.
Should it be covered by statute?
Statutes are kind of strange sometimes. They make the rules, but they leave it to us to do that enforcement. I think it's a good thing to have the life safety code and have the code enforcement be able to enforce those codes and to still have the building codes and to be able to enforce those codes. And there should be an interchange, because a smoke detector would be both life safety and building code.
Sure.
And I think that's what he's driving for. Am I saying that right?
Yeah,
Let me,
I mean, yeah, I just think when Orion was setting this up, it was just easier, instead of trying to commingle it
Yeah.
in with the other chapter, just to create this one chapter by itself. It's just easier to reference as, you know, the fire prevention and protection chapter. There may be some wording that's identical to the other chapter, but again, they're gonna kind of live together. But this helps define it between building code and the fire department, their fire prevention and protection stuff. Yep. Tomato, tomato, it all depends on how you want to structure it. The information's the same.
We could let Orion deal with where it goes.
Yeah, I think so. Yep. Here, 800 or new chapter, new ordinance.
Yeah.
So let's go through the other issues that are flagged here. So 800 really is the reference there, Jan, to which chapter it belongs in. Let's see, what's this one? Along with these Orovision?
Along with these provisions. You see,
Provisions.
This is 800, these go along
Yeah,
with
yeah,
it, and
yep.
the next one down here is 600.
Yep. Fire safety may not require any permit. The chief or designee shall have the right of inspection as a condition of the C of O for any structure. Is that text you're adding into this? Jan?
No, I'm not. Can we go over?
It's in the upper right corner of that screen right there.
There is a little more in here.
Oh, can you expand? Yeah, there you go.
Fire safety may not require a permit. Chief or designee should have the right of inspection as a condition of certificate of occupancy. So it says
Scroll up a little bit, Jeff, in the document.
up here.
There you go.
Right. something that allows the chief to enter the premises at any reasonable time after the licensee receives notice. And I'm just saying, do it before you get the certificate of occupancy. Have it looked at that as a condition of the COO.
Can you reiterate your comment with the board?
I'm sorry, Jeff.
Just reiterate.
I
To the
just think, I think that the time for the inspection, that the chief or the chief's designee for the inspection, that inspection for fire safety should be part of the process of getting a certificate of occupancy.
I guess that the fire chief has the authority and the right to in this, and so you're restating it. You're
Okay, if you read it that way, then fine, then you don't need what I've said in there. I just want to make sure, it just seemed to me that prior to the C of O being issued would be the right time to do
Yeah.
the inspection, and that it be done on a regular basis.
I think where you're adding this assertion is that it then requires the fire chief to inspect it prior to the certificate of occupancy. And I think what the document does otherwise is to allow the fire chief to have the authority to do that. So we're basically saying, fire chief, you or your designee must now inspect prior to a certificate of occupancy.
That's my preference.
Yeah.
Now, that's the question here.
Right.
Is this a should or a must? Yes.
Right, should or must, or may or must.
May or must, yeah.
Any thoughts on that from the board?
Andrew?
His designee could be me. Just throwing that out there. Code and fire would probably, if not, would work hand in hand. We would schedule the C of O and let them know that this is happening, and they would either join us if they're not doing something else,
Yeah.
but we would coordinate that together.
And your office is definitely going to inspect it prior to a certificate of occupancy, so
Absolutely.
it's already, if they designate you, then you're already doing it. Any other discussion on that item?
Jen, are you fine with it, leaving it as is, or do you want to change the wording after hearing that?
Well, I'm convinced that they're gonna do this, that they're gonna look at the property, and so I'm fine. For me, it's all about intent.
Right.
And if the intent is to make sure that things get inspected for, then I don't care what the wording says.
Okay.
Next.
The next one was to add a letter I, power to enforce the supervision of any permitted fire, for example, trash or yard waste burning. Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
Number B,
Oh,
I just had a
above?
question. The last part of that says, in order to prevent the spread of fire or the increase or danger, I think that's the increase of danger.
Yes?
Yeah.
Good catch.
There you go. Okay, back to I. So you're looking to add, Jan, the power to enforce the supervision of any permitted fire, for example, trash or yard waste burning.
I don't know that the example has to go there, but you know, you can't have a fire, you can't burn your field without a permit.
Right.
To do it, and so.
Right.
And the permit, that sets stipulations, so I just think that.
We can leave
any of
that
these
out.
kinds- Any of these kinds of fires.
We can leave that out. The state takes care of that.
Okay.
It's already mandated by the state, okay.
Yeah, it's already mandated by the
Okay.
state.
Oh,
Yep.
that's fine. Okay.
Okay, this is my comment. Any alarm system that causes the transmittal of a non-emergency alarm. So this I flagged as what is an emergency alarm versus a non-emergency alarm by definition, and Orion said, ask Andrew.
Nice guy, isn't he?
Yeah.
Basically, what this whole paragraph is about is there has to be a little bit of discretion left for the fire chief. Okay, so what we're kind of talking about when it comes to this is the detector that goes off, and it's like, you go there, you answer the call, it was nothing, maybe it was dirty. Well, did they clean it? Has it been cleaned? A week later, you go back, it's the same detector. A week later, you go back, it's the same detector. You're trying to stop this cry wolf, because eventually, when the alarm goes off, and it's the same address for the fourth time in 1 month, the guys that carry the black boxes on their waist aren't getting up, because they know it's just a dirty detector. That's the wrong thought process, but that's what happens. So that's kind of, when a non-emergency, if the fire alarm goes off or a smoke detector is activated, it's an emergency. It went off for a reason. Doesn't mean it went off because there's smoke in the house or there's fire, but it did do its job. It's up to the people that have these systems. They need to maintain them. You all maintain yours, right? Every 6 months, you change the batteries. Once a year, you clean them.
Yes.
And you change the batteries. This is yes.
Yes.
That's what needs to happen, and people don't do that.
Yes, right. However, I will note that I've been in charge of large facility like fire protection systems where we have, water on charge systems and air systems and dry systems.
Sure.
When we do the required 5-year flush test,
Yep.
sometimes the valve doesn't seat right, and we end up with like 3 false alarms in a row right after that.
Yep.
Sometimes over the course of a week or 2.
And that's the discretion of the fire chief. That's where,
So this is the piece of like it's very tricky where he all of a sudden has discretion as to who gets fined for what version of their false alarm is the right. And I get what you're trying to prevent with this.
Yep.
But I also understand like that having that as a mechanism, while good, can also be, if it isn't just evenly applied,
sure.
then it becomes kind of like, I think it just is very sticky.
Yeah.
Where for this whole piece of loosely defined kind of causes, and then again, it's all discretionary towards where one person is. You know what I mean? Like it leaves the town open in regards to, this is being unfairly applied to me. This is it wasn't a true false alarm.
Sure.
This wasn't really my fault or fixable, and yet I'm still getting the fine.
Yep.
I wonder how we're going to handle that. I'm with you.
The flip side to that is the trucks going to your establishment but they're not needed because your system's not performing the way it's supposed to. And the flip side to that is the taxpayers going, why am I spending money to send these trucks every time and they don't do anything? So, I mean, I totally get what you're saying, and that's where the chief needs to communicate with those building maintenance people and say, what's going on? You need to explain that to me. Maybe I can be notified that you're doing maintenance. I can be on scene or something. There is a communications point to that.
Right.
But ideally, what this is trying to do is eliminate the non-emergency, the false alarms. So, because your call guys are getting called out and, that's the point of it.
Yes, sir.
And
If you have a taillight out, you get stopped by the police, and if you show up 3 days later and show that you fixed the taillight, then they throw away the ticket. Can't there be a system where, when you had a problem with the valve seat, and so you got, I would think, more than a $10 fine, if you had the valve replaced or repaired and brought the receipt back to the fire chief or back to the town, couldn't you get your money back? I mean, it would seem to me that as long as you show that you have repaired the problem or have tried to repair the problem, that you shouldn't be fined for it. Is that a fair thing to do?
I mean, certainly sounds that way. no idea how that would work in reality in terms of like refunding people fine money,
I
but.
don't know how that, I don't know how that would work either.
All right, that settles it.
I do. I can say that this doesn't happen a lot.
Yep,
I
no,
mean,
understood.
this wouldn't, people wouldn't be fined. The three alarms in a consecutive year, it doesn't happen that often, but when it does, the reason it happens is because somebody's not taking care of their system or an issue that should be taken care of. That's all. It's kind of it's a nudge, like, hey, you need to fix this. And it kind of puts some, some emphasis on, you need to fix it and let me know that you're fixing it. Well, the alarm company can't come for a month. Well, let me know that you've made the appointment, you've made the effort to correct this. And if this comes in, we understand. You can't get somebody there to look at it. The system's still working, it's still providing the life safety that it needs. The part, it's gonna take a month to get the part. Well, the town can't hold that person liable because the part's not coming. They just need to communicate that.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
I get
We
you.
need to work together.
Andrew, were you involved when Ryan was writing these, or did he consult you on this
little
one in
bit.
particular?
Yeah, a little
Okay.
bit, yep.
Do you know where he was getting the text for this from?
I believe another town, probably.
I think so. I think
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah,
case.
I think he looked at a couple different towns
Yeah,
and said, what are they doing?
yeah.
And, what is their?
I'm not sure if this is modeled on Camden's, but it's similar to what
It may
Camden
be
has.
Camden's, it may be a little bit of Rockland.
Yeah.
I don't know, area towns.
Yep. Yeah, I think since the only sort of discomfort from you, Sam, was that it may not be applied evenly.
Just the potential for the perception of such.
Yeah. It seems like the fine on a one-off of $100 doesn't seem like exorbitant, or it's enough to prevent it from happening. Like, you wouldn't want to keep getting these fines.
No, and I'll say right
And
now,
then
after
it's preceded by having a written record from the fire chief too, so.
Yep. No, and again, after having this conversation with him, I was just actually getting ready to say that, like, I'm good with it, with the way it is.
Okay, okay. Do you have any concerns, Jan, other than you want to change the word from non-emergency
Yeah,
to false?
a non-emergency. I think it's just a false alarm.
Yeah.
I don't know, non-emergency. Do you see a technical difference in your understanding of it?
Well, because it's not a false alarm. The alarm itself is actually going off, and you're going through in a non-emergency.
Well,
But in a non-emergency like situation.
Leave it
and
alone.
and that's where
No, no,
it's-
let's leave it
I'm with
alone.
you, but like that's.
I'm gonna leave it
there-
alone.
Yeah, leave it as non-emergency.
Yes.
It's not, it's signaling, it's doing what the system's supposed to do. It's just, it's not
It has incorrect reasonings for
correct.
doing so.
The
exactly.
input it's getting is wrong.
Okay.
And my only other comment here was what constituted a natural or unnatural event beyond the property owner's control? Like, what would something like that be? Like, if,
Well, I think one of the things that the example I gave is that when you open that valve, the sediment that's down the back side of it can kind of still be there, and that'll prevent that valve from seeding again. So
Right.
that's beyond their control. It's a natural event, I mean, there's sediment in the water line, and when you flush it, it moves, and there's nothing really you can do about that.
but it happened because of the property owner. I mean, that.
Right, well, the property owner was required by state law to do a flow inspection, right? Like, it's,
Well, and the other thing that's gonna happen with your sprinkler system is if there's a spike in the water company, it can activate your sprinkler. That's
Yeah.
not the property owner's fault, it's a spike.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
I'm happy with leaving it in
Yep.
there. It just
Yep.
is a head scratcher to me that
Or
somebody might say,
smoke
like,
from
you can't
Canada
find me.
blows
It's a
down, your
natural,
windows are open
natural
during the summer,
occurring,
it sets the
whatever.
alarm off. You can't
Whatever.
control that.
well, I was gonna say, there was a lot of alarms that went off a couple of nights ago when it was super humid and everybody had the windows
Yes,
open.
exactly.
It went off through Rockland,
Right.
Rockport, Camden,
Right.
people everywhere talking about having
Yeah,
people showing well
or if someone was burning leaves, your neighbor was burning leaves, it might set it off.
Right, and so there's these things of
Yeah.
the natural.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm fine with leaving it, though.
Okay.
Any other modifications to this? I think we've reviewed what we're modifying and what we're not without actually modifying the document. So it's in the record. Orion can handle it. So can we have a vote to, or a motion to approve our discussed changes to these fire prevention and protection ordinance, wherever it actually ends up being. Recommend to the select board.
So motion that we recommend this section for fire and fire protection wherever it ends up to the select board with our discussed changes.
Second.
Sam, Jan. Okay, all in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 0, 0. Okay, next one is licensing business and others. So this one, move 814 itinerant peddler into this ordinance, place itinerant peddler. So this is a completely separate ordinance, I guess. I think that's Ryan's comment here at the beginning. Town attorney recommends this to be a standalone ordinance, still needs planning board recommendation for this an edit to the land use ordinance to move it out of it. So we can, I think, review this in total, or we can just say, yes, move the itinerant peddler out of the land use ordinance and be done with it.
I like that one.
Yeah?
Yep. What you said.
Okay, so, any further discussion, however, I said that. Okay, is there a motion to, recommend removal of itinerant peddler from, the land use ordinance into this, and, I don't know what we do with it. Do we-
Make an ordinance that, recommend that an ordinance be.
Recommend that the select board determine, maybe this is a job for the ORC.
Callback. Hold on.
Recommend that it be converted into, taken from the land use ordinance and put into its own ordinance.
Yeah, that sounds good.
And that's, this entire thing is just doing that, not adding anything new?
No, it's adding new things because it's basically developing the permitting requirements for businesses, right?
Yeah. And it's structured.
Lodging and victualers.
Lodging and victualers.
Vittlers.
Vittlers.
What else?
Lots of things about businesses that don't have,
It's Vittel and Vittler.
So you don't
Yes.
pronounce the C.
There, you don't pronounce the C and T, or the C anyway.
Nope.
It's Vittel and Vittler.
I thought that was a southern thing. There's also in here, changes to the licensing for businesses that do not have, basically brick and mortar home.
Yes.
I think they should put up a bond or insurance or something like that. These guys that come around to do your gutters or this, that, or the other thing. I think that they need to be licensed, and I think that the town should require that they put up some proof of the fact that they're that they're actually a legitimate business.
So this is, I mean, I think that's a legitimate comment. I think this is where it's like, what does this have to do with planning?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing
Okay.
at all. I think it should be pulled out and made into an ordinance by somebody else.
Yeah. I mean, I've got opinions on these things too, but I just don't think this is the forum to discuss,
Exactly right.
to discuss them. I think the only couple of things that came to mind was the sale of things in the public way. And so that was the peddling, as it's called in the land use ordinance, which we're moving out.
Right.
Because that does involve the use of town land. And I had a couple comments was if there is no vehicle, so he pulled that out. Because you can peddle things, on a carpet, on the sidewalk or something.
Yes.
So, but I'm happy with just removing this from the land use ordinance and saying,
Absolutely.
the select board can
Absolutely.
review this. Or whomever they designate.
All right.
So can someone help me with a motion for that?
As I say, you want to work me through what the motion's supposed to look like on that one?
Yeah. We, I guess, recommend the
Motion to recommend to the select board that we remove 814 itinerant peddler from the land use ordinance and into the proposed ordinance that is in front of us, the licensing, license types.
Right.
Place itinerant peddler in subsection with license types.
Yeah,
Doing that and leaving it up to their discretion at that point.
right.
Second.
Who's the second?
Yeah.
Second? Okay.
In a flash. Yes.
Any further discussion? All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5, 0, 0. All right. The last one's an easy one. So, should we require 15 copies or 2?
That passes,
And 1 digital copy?
I like
Two
this.
plus,
money,
it's
fellas.
2 plus an electronic version,
Yes.
or a digital version.
Yes. I like that.
I don't think I've seen 15 copies of anything ever, so.
I don't think you probably used to have to do that, but I think the digital piece is perfectly fine.
Yes.
When I worked at Xerox, they would have been in favor of an ordinance like that.
Right, exactly. Okay, any further, sorry, is there a
Do we-
motion?
Real quick on that piece, it also is removing the 15 calendar days prior to the planning board meeting at which the applicant wishes to be heard. We're removing that piece from that. Are we okay with removing that piece of it as well?
It's revisions to approved site plans. So does that,
Applicants proposing revisions to an existing site plan should submit 2 hard copies and 1 digital copy of the revision application to the planning office.
it's not for all site plans, it's just for revisions, it's that third, I think, section of the,
Yeah, I guess it's just
1305.
avoiding having it handed off to them a day before, but I think with revisions, are we actually okay with them kind of getting it to us at the last second and reviewing it when we're here? I think that's kind of more of what we've been to, because it allows it to be a little bit more flexible, and I think that might be why he's taking that off.
Seems like it.
So,
probably.
in the section above this, I think it outlines that the planning director has 14 days to, within 14 days of receiving the application, the planning and development director shall review the application for completeness. So, it's giving the planning director 2 weeks with it, and it's removing it from that section right there.
Got it.
So he's already got that.
I was just cleaning up the backside.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. I move that we recommend to the select board to the proposed changes to section 1304 site plan content.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Jan. Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor? 5, 0, 0. Okay. So that wraps up our consideration of ordinance amendments. Item 5 on the agenda was any other business. I think there was an item that Orion wanted us to consider, which was I don't have my notes here from it. Consider the next meeting, which is actually, I think, on Thanksgiving Day,
Of course,
Our next
fourth Thursday.
to not happen on that, sorry, the November meeting
November.
to not happen on Thanksgiving Day.
I think
and
that's
ins-
fair.
And instead schedule a meeting earlier, I believe, in the month. But I don't think we have the applications yet. Let me just put it this way. Let's have a discussion as to whether the meeting should happen on, for September, October, November, December, within those calendar dates that line up the third or fourth Thursday of the month, or if we should adjust something around the holidays. So I think just like stay tuned to your email to see how we're gonna schedule those meetings.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah, because I don't quite recall what he wanted us to do scheduling around those two meetings. He had something else in mind, and he's not here to speak about it, so,
We'll just move it up a week and call it good.
yeah, something like
Just
that.
hope that's what he wants.
Yeah, that's what he wants,
No?
yeah.
All right, well, maybe not.
Schedule your
So
flights.
we have looked at it, we will keep it in mind that we will have
Keep it
to
in
make
mind,
adjustments.
that's all, keep it in mind.
But,
Okay,
but October stays, I mean, September and October could stay where they are.
Yeah,
Okay.
yep.
Yeah, but you could do the third week real easy. On 21st would be the week before
Of November.
Thanksgiving.
Right.
Yeah, and then Christmas, it would be like the 19th, and that would avoid all of the New Year's
Yep,
and all
yep,
the
yep.
rest of it.
Fine.
we'll see if that matches.
Yep.
Okay,
Okay, so do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn, please.
Okay. All in
Second.
favor? We don't need a second for
What?
adjournment, right?
we'll give him 5.
Quick question.
5-0.
Do all you guys eat before you come to the meeting? When do you
usually
eat
do.
dinner?
I don't.
I have a heavy snack because I understand that this is often the case with
No,
these
that's what
meetings.
that's what I did.